All right. I call it Bertha, the voice on the phone or the computer. So we haven't done a community dinner in a while. So if you're watching this, I apologize, but it's the holidays. So I make it a point to try to not celebrate Gregorian New Year because it's Gregorian. And I'm reading this book that this guy, so this monad here, the hieroglyphic monad, written by a guy named John Dee, an alchemist, made this up. And I'm reading a book by him called John Dee and the Empire of Angels. More woo-woo stuff. But his contention is the same thing that I'm going to go into now, is that he was helping redesign the Gregorian calendar in 1580. It was that badly put together. It was all distorted and messed up. And so John Dee helped a group of people put the calendar sort of back in line. And that's why there's always a leap year, because the Gregorian calendar is a distortion.
Yeah.
Jose Arguelles goes into talking about it. What's 13 times 28?
365.
364. That's a year.
Okay, 13 times what?
28. 13 28-day moons is a year.
A full moon a month.
Yeah, I mean, why aren't we on a lunar calendar?
So they put us on this screwed up calendar that makes no sense at all.
That's where Vedic comes.
31 days month, 30-day month, 28-day month, 30-day month, 31-day month, 30-day month. And they put us in a language that puts us in a 2B form of everything. I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm cold, I'm hot. We have this month that's 31 days, a month 30 days. And so we're never in sync with the universe.
Right.
Explains Confucius. Yeah, the real New Year is the day after the winter solstice.
Exactly. That to me, Christmas is the new year to me, because it feels so special and like,
Oh, yeah, right.
you know.
Then I offer something.
And this year was
Yeah.
pouring
I have it
rain.
that the New Year is spring, the first day of spring. That's
Many traditions.
Yeah,
Yeah, many traditions. That's the new year.
So this feels like anticlimactic.
Well, this Gregorian thing, that
Oh,
you could
yeah.
make an argument that the whole world believes in it. So it is a field of consciousness right now, tonight. And people jump in, I used to jump in. I've been, I was younger, I've been in San Francisco partying it up, 3 floors of dancing and, ragers and, all that stuff. But I was telling Drew, like, I cannot imagine driving over 17 tonight, and driving back, I just
Yeah,
don't.
one of his tenants would send
No desire whatsoever.
party.
Well, my problem is I sort of still have this adrenaline junkie thing. And so if I drove 17, I would drive too fast because I like driving 17 fast. When I'm alone, at least, not with passengers. So I wanted to bring it back to how is this symbol related? If you just take apart that symbol right there. What do you see when you start to take it apart?
Little man?
No, just individual parts. Yeah, there's a man with a hat, sure.
I see the symbol for woman. I see.
Well, you can take the symbol for the sun out of that. Essentially, with the circle and the dot.
Oh, like the astrological.
Yeah.
I'm gonna draw it.
Like a
The
cross.
cross. And what I used to draw birds to make birds.
John Dee's contention is the whole universe is contained in this symbol.
The whole universe.
John Dee's contention is the entire universe is contained within this symbol. He's a famous alchemist. He was so famous that I'm reading this book about him, and I heard about him from this symbol, studying alchemy. I've written a 30-page alchemical sort of PhD paper about how the alchemists believed they could transform base metals into gold. Right. But in my studies of it, that was partly metaphorical, that if they could do that, that means their heart has turned to gold, and the person who wanted to turn base metals to gold no longer exists when they purified their heart that much. So it's a bait and switch. There's the ego wants to make the gold out of the base metals. The alchemist does the work to purify the heart, which makes him able to do that work. But then by the time his heart gets pure, he no longer cares about the gold. It's a big bait and switch. That's what my life was. You know why I got into spirituality? To manipulate people, to put my will upon them so I could levitate. When I was 20, when I broke my neck when I was 21. I was sort of reading these stories about these yogis and like, I want to meditate, I want to levitate, I want to do Luke Skywalker stuff. I want to manipulate people and get into places I can't get into. That's the young man stuff. Control. I could get more women. right? I'm going to be better looking, have a better body, so I'll get more women, you know. Vanity, Ajashanti calls it the great bait and switch in some spiritual tradition, right? They give you the whole, oh, enlightenment's going to be so great. The bait and switch, right? The divine bait and switch. They give you the sales job about how great enlightenment's going to be, but they don't tell you the byproduct of what enlightenment really is. So it's kind of a bait and switch. So back to this. So there's a dot, right? Let's start with that. So what's a dot represent? Sure, center, moment in time, right? It's a moment in time. Then John Dee would say, okay, the dot, and then the next thing between a dot is two dots, right? Then you get a line, right? So you have a relationship, right? So there's one and then there's two. And then he says, okay, now watch this. A line can also become a circle. It's just a line that's been bent. So there's the one becomes, you know, there's a circle. And what's this? What's the cross? What's the cross represent? Huh?
Two intersecting lines.
Two intersecting lines. This is duality. This is the divine vertical, and this is the dualistic horizontal. In shamanism, Carlos Castaneda called this the Nagual, the unknown, and this the tonal, the known.
Or it looks like a symbol for Venus of some description.
Right.
Where did this originally come from?
This is John Dee, the alchemist, the hieroglyphic monad, this is called. And well, what's this up here? It's a crescent moon, but it's very poorly drawn. It's a banana, or, you know, it's like, is it a slug? Is it a slug? What is that thing you got up there? It's supposed to be a crescent moon.
I thought it was, that's what I thought.
You know, it's a crescent moon. And what's that?
Is that the Earth?
Wait, so what is it on top? What is that?
It's a crescent moon.
Okay, but what does that symbolize then?
So there's sun and moon, right? There's that sun-moon duality.
Moon, sun, spirit, and Earth.
So what's that? I thought it was a couple of butt cheeks myself when I first saw it.
It looks like breasts to me.
Scratch.
Like cleavage. They look like feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, put some nipples on yourself.
Moon, sun, spirit, and Earth. That's my guess.
So he had the explanation for this goes on for 10 pages about, you know, why he came up with it and how, but I saw a man in Maui 20 years ago. His claim was he could sum up God in a mathematical equation. This guy in Maui. So I'm like, oh my God, the audacity of this guy. He's just like me. I'm gonna go see him. You know. So, you know, I'm like, I gotta go see this guy. If he's making claims like I am, I'm gonna see what this guy's about. And he had this whiteboard that was as big as this wall, and started over there and finished over here 2 hours later, and he did it. I know if you have to know calculus and geometry and, you know, all of it to follow what this guy was putting up there, but I couldn't believe it. He actually went through the divine process in this long mathematical sequence over 2 hours and told stories, and wow. So this guy said the same thing. And a lot of the people in the Elizabethan age, before England became a power, this book about John Dee, he was alive from 1520 to about 1600 something. And he was in the court and he was the alchemist, but Britain at the time didn't have a navy yet, and they weren't the superpower. Spain and Portugal and Holland were running the world. And Elizabeth was into magic. She was into shamanism, but she couldn't talk about it because of the church, right? And so she was kind of like in the background working with Dee, but he had been publicly shamed because he had been called an arch conjurer, and a bunch of his, you know, enemies were trying to compete because alchemy was becoming a big thing. And I can turn base metal into gold, and that idiot over there can't. He's Satan over there. So there's horrible backstabbing going on in the court. But it turns out that Dee, a lot of what we have in modern history was because of this man. For example, Sir Francis Drake, you know, Drake's Bay up in San Francisco, north of there. He provided the navigation for him to go around South America was Dee. And he didn't get any credit for that. But they wouldn't have made it around South America without this guy's tools.
They threw him in jail.
They threw him in jail. They tortured him like He was one of us. He was certainly one of us. And that's what happens to empaths right throughout history, you know, the witch burnings and all kinds of stuff. So he was into this. Alchemy was a whole thing, but it was the Western version of Chinese medicine and yoga, but they had to keep it under wraps because of heresy in the church, right? In the East, they were free to do what they wanted, but Leonardo had to write backwards in a mirror. That's how scared he was of the church. Yeah, he wrote backwards in a mirror. He was so terrified of the church seeing what he wrote as heresy against the God they know that, you know. So this word comes up. I was talking to a few of you about it. This word gnosis. What does the word gnosis mean?
Is that
To know.
G-N-O, G-N-O-S-I-S.
Joseph?
To know.
Right.
Mhm.
To know directly.
Experientially.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
This is to know, and this is what the Essenes were. This is what Jesus was. But you know, we don't know Jesus lived. There's no
Right,
evidence,
yeah.
but you know, we'll give him that. So to know directly, then what happened was between Jesus's death and about the Council of Nicaea, 300 AD-ish, is the literalist Christians, in other words, the deep state at the time, slaughtered all the Gnostic Christians. Millions and millions of people were slaughtered.
Can you go back to the council?
Of
Can you say that
Nicaea.
again? Can you explain what that is?
So the Council of Nicaea convened so they could take all the Gospels, all the old histories, and make the Bible, which then they chose Matthew, Mark, John,
They
and Luke.
chose some and they took some away.
Like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. They can't have a woman gospel in there, for God's sakes. No, we can't have women. And the Gospel of Thomas was just a bunch of gnarly Jesus sayings that had nothing to do with anything, just out of context and everything. You know, there was a couple of that, they were just unacceptable for trying to control the masses.
Well, there was a whole thing in costume history too about women having to cover their heads when they went to church. Because
Only in church?
Well, yeah, well, in the Christianity beliefs.
Wore veils.
Catholicism, because, and that kept them from directly connecting to spirit
Huh.
and that was a controlling factor, that they were less than, and so the attire was required. And in many churches, that's still true.
So why do you think Mary Magdalene was called a whore?
Wait. So yes. You guys go to Christian school, you should know.
Why was Mary Magdalene called a whore?
I don't know the answer to that one.
I mean,
Because she lusted after Jesus.
why, what do you mean by that? Like, why because of what she did, or why because of what other people were trying to
To
do?
put on her?
What did they base it on?
Well, she was a high priestess, see.
Oh, yeah.
And the high priestesses, they didn't, the patriarchy couldn't have powerful women running around. So she had to be, they did the same thing that the smear campaign.
Right.
They've been doing it for thousands of years.
She's a witch, she's a
We
whore.
can't, yeah, she's a witch, she's a whore, because
And she couldn't sue him for libel.
No. So this is a loose metaphor. It's a little more animalistic, but it's a loose metaphor of what the high priestess can do for men. So anybody heard the bonobo monkey story? I've told it a few times.
No.
I don't remember. Okay, good.
Donkey, what?
Bonobo monkeys. This is from Paul Damon. This is courtesy of Paul Damon. So he told me this story, which I find very entertaining. And I have seen the video on YouTube. So you type in bonobo monkey going crazy or something. And so there's this tribe of monkeys in Africa, I guess. And when the males, you know, how the young males are, they get a little, you know, they run around like crazy. So if one of them is a little bit too out of control, two women grab the guy, have sex with him, and then he's all calm as heck afterwards. And there used to be this saying, well, sometimes for how strong men can be, you know, you had to hold the guy down. One of them had to hold the guy down while the other lady had, you know, had fun, and they just take turns. Or the video was very funny though, because once he knew what was going on, he calmed down right away. He's like, oh wait, I don't have to be. Oh wait, okay, I can just. Oh. There's a look on his face of like, what? Getting love? And Marion Zimmer Bradley in Miss of Avalon loosely referred to the priestesses of Avalon, that they could fuck the war out of the men. Excuse my language, but that when people go to war, the PTSD can be dealt with just with nurturing. Doesn't have to be sex per se, but just nurturing, like being held, affection, being looked at. Because think about if you've killed somebody, how much shame you've got.
That was love and acceptance.
Love and acceptance from the woman, right? You're okay. You're just protecting us. It's okay. You've killed. Because men are big babies asking mommy for forgiveness half the time. Or man-child, right? It's like, mommy, see what a good boy I've been? I used to do it to so many girlfriends, and this one was like, Craig, this is yuck. I'm not your mommy. And she saw through the psychology of it.
There's something also in men that can like accept.
The men have three functions through men's work: protector, provider, and passion.
So killing someone is contrary.
But there's nothing that anybody can do when you killed somebody,
Yeah, but
there's
I'm
there
saying it's
you can have all the concept and all the forgiveness you want, but there's still going to be a backlash from taking a life. Especially, when it's violent, like, a lot of the wars that men have fought in, and some women too, like I was always a fan of what was it, Joan of Arc. She was quite a kick butt warrior. So we're into this now. And so what's May 1st then, which is the opposite of October 31st? And what's the energy of that day? Because I'm trying to teach process. That's everything I'm teaching now is taking us back to understanding the roller coaster of life and the snapshots, to take them for what they are, representations of life. We've worshiped the false idols too long. These are the false idols. The chemistry is the false idol, because chemistry is dead. A snapshot of anybody of us running a race is dead. Us running a race is alive. And that's why people that start to see, you guys see, like, this is where you learn nourishment. This is where you learn nutrition, because your own body is the test tube. You don't need an exterior source to tell you anymore. Like, I don't feel good after I eat that. That's all you need to know. Don't eat it.
Yeah.
Don't eat it. I don't feel good eating red meat. Then don't eat red meat, Right. If you don't feel good an hour after you eat, the meal didn't work. That's all you need to know. There's no dogma in my system, But if you live in Alaska in the middle of the winter, this is where we also have a thermostat that turns. And in the fall, cold and flu season is because we're switching from carb metabolism to fat metabolism. Because you burn fat, you have heat. You burn carbs, you don't have heat. Most Americans are too cold because they don't metabolize fat well.
That's true.
I was like 9 years old and I saw these Indians in this movie. I told Mary Jane, running around in bare feet in the snow. And I'm like, aren't they freezing? No, they're eating raw fat. They would go over the carcass and carve up a chunk out of the caribou and just, eat it all raw. And all that fat kept them, and I didn't, because I was always cold, but I was a carbaholic. I mean, I could put sugar away like anybody. Hey, Gary, welcome. Doug, we're on, you're being recorded, so don't say anything too gnarly. So we just switched, so we're switching into fat metabolism now. And what system in your body has to be working really well for fat metabolism to work? I bet you no one will get it.
Yes,
What do you think?
liver.
Yes, that's one of them, but it's not the one that's hidden from view. What system does your cells poop into?
Your lymph system.
Your lymphatic system.
That's right.
Fat doesn't, see, protein and carbs, they get digested and go over the portal veins, over to the liver. Fat goes into the lymphatic system and gets dumped out up by the heart in the subclavian vein. That's why your triglycerides or your blood fat goes up so far after you eat. It's not being processed until it goes into general circulation first. And so if your lymph is clogged, your fat metabolism isn't going to go along very well. And most people have clogged lymph.
How do you unclog it?
Well, more raw food is the easy. I'm here to teach the easy, and the easy is more raw food. Fish oil is more unsaturated fats, but most people have too many particulates. Like if you have pure water, it's a certain viscosity, right? What happens if you start throwing dirt in the water? It's thicker and thicker, and you don't want thick fluids. So the first system that goes is the bile gets thick. And that's when it gets thicker and thicker, that turns into gallstones. That's the ultimate end product of thick bile. And so the easiest way to do that is raw beet, and raw beet thins the bile, raw radish thins the lymph. You know, people get all whiny about it. And that's why I have a radish salad in my recipes and a beet salad, because there's no substitutes. It's like, no, you don't get you. There's medicine.
And I didn't say that.
Well, I have hundreds, I'm 25, 30 years into this, you know, hundreds of, because I was a whiner. I hated, until I broke my neck 35 years ago, I didn't eat vegetables. My mom reminded me at Christmas dinner, it was like maybe some salads, maybe a carrot, celery here and there, maybe some cooked broccoli with tons of cheese and mayonnaise and mustard on it.
Ugh.
Right. It was more like, if I had veggies, it was more butter than it was veggies on the plate, you know? And so breaking the neck, in a sense, was, for me, was my awakening, you know, because it got me out of Jolly Ranchers, Cheetos, macaroni and cheese, Chef Boyardee, Ballpark Franks, Oscar Mayer's. Oh yeah, I mean, I had a great youth. Yes.
Pop-Tarts.
Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, gotta love Pop-Tarts.
Tricks,
Cinnamon
Cocoa
Pop-Tarts.
Pebbles, Captain Crunch,
Yeah.
Peanut Butter Captain
Oh, it
Crunch,
hurts my mouth just-
Boo Berry. Remember Boo Berry, Count Chocula?
Oh.
Boo Berry, Count Chocula.
I was too poor to afford it.
I guess I'm too old.
God,
Don't forget Tricks.
Tricks.
Those were special.
Oh my God, yeah.
Captain Crunch.
And they put iron filings in Wheaties.
Well, that's what, actually, good, thank you. That's the segue. Drew, you're killing it, man. Here's the segue.
Iron, freaking filings and Wheaties.
Yeah,
Right.
that was what, when it says so much iron, that actually was
It's actually
iron,
literally.
iron filings. Yeah, you could take a magnet,
I
you could take a
believe it.
magnet and you could use.
I've seen 5 videos with the magnet.
Yeah,
It's
I've seen
scary.
that in baby food.
It's scary.
They're-
Okay, guys, this is where I'm going to finish. I'm going to start and finish tonight on this, because it's the central issue I'm going to be teaching into next year. And iron and oxygen have got to be metabolized properly, and it's not. And we've been building up. So Morley Robbins, my team, no one on my team's here. Oh, you were there. So I showed you guys that Morley Robbins post about iron toxicity, right? So this guy on the root cause protocol that I told you has been researching this longer than any of us by far, says, you know, we really have a problem with iron. It's central to many of our issues. And then I go through his index posts of iron posts, there's about 70 of them. Iron in lime, iron in Epstein-Barr, iron in high cholesterol. All this stuff. I mean, I thought I was a pretty high-end nutritionist, but, and guess what messes up iron metabolism faster than anything? Copper and magnesium deficiency. And what messes with copper metabolism more than anything? The COVID recommendations. D3 and ascorbic acid and zinc all disharmonize copper metabolism. I'm going to go to it with anybody at this point, because I got the data to back me up. I got the PowerPoints. I got more of these 20 years of research, you know, so I can go toe-to-toe with anybody on this and say D3 is only to be used by people that are not in the sun. Didn't you guys, when you were a kid, if I got a cold when I was a kid, I'd always try and get in the sun for a little while, because you're getting 27 forms of D from the sun. 27. You're getting one called D3. They're called stereoisomers in chemistry.
What about this time of year? I was told.
They tell you all kinds of shit, don't they?
Okay, eat oranges.
My sense from childhood was I was a sun worshiper, and I tried to get sun as often as I could. And so cod liver oil is your proper, if you need a little D3, I've done D3 with people in the winter, you know, like a couple guys in Alaska. It's like, yeah, take your D3, but take cod liver oil with it. Because cod liver oil is giving all the 27 forms. Because Morley's contention with the root cause protocol is D3 is an over-the-counter hormone, and it messes up this copper metabolism, which ultimately causes either reactive oxygen species to yang, or hypoxia, which is anaerobic metabolism, which is more yin. So do you want to be too hot or too cold? Well, if you keep doing what they're telling you to do, that's where you're going to end up long-term. Short-term, a month to 6 weeks, do the COVID protocol by all means. But I don't do those COVID protocols, not any of them. I do the standard process Conjuplex and an herbal blend, and all my COVID people are fine. And then you have to, if they have long COVID cases, then you have to check for adrenal fatigue, which nobody does. And so there are many ways to cure a person, and that's what is not being talked about in mainstream media at all. You could take a COVID case and take 20 different approaches, which would work. But they're not telling us that. Oh, it's only one way, and it's this formula here, these 25 freaking synthetic supplements, don't have any enzymes in them, no phytochemistry, none of nature's wisdom, because some ego thought of it.
Doctors don't mess with nutrition, am I right?
They don't know anything about
Yeah, they don't
nutrition,
know.
which is why I hammer doctors, because we talk about scope of practice. I don't tell this guy how to do his work. So, you know, the doctor, I don't tell the doctor which drugs to prescribe. So I tell them, shut the F up. Scope of practice is mine, 35,000 hours. How much you got? You got maybe 10? Shut up. You got no credit. It's about credibility. You're a lawyer, right? You got to have credibility.
Me? What?
No, Carol.
I'm like, what?
Carol's a lawyer. So if you don't have credibility, are they going to listen to you in court? They're going to listen to you in court. You don't have credibility. Like the journalists these days, we don't have journalists. We have reporters. There's no credibility. They're just this big spell. Oh, I love popping the spell. I'm going to bless one of my Mankind Project men. I'm not going to name him right now, but I'm sending you love, brother. You know who you are. Talked to him for a while today, and he's my most blessed friend, mentor, because he doesn't agree with me, but he hangs in there with me. And I'm watching his life change. And I hope, actually, I'm going to send the link to this. Because that's what we're in, is we're learning that the central issues aren't that difficult. The best way to cure this is get enough greens for your magnesium and eat liver for your copper. Now, that's the end result. How are you going to get there? Well, I don't like liver, so it's like slice it thin, you know.
Question about liver.
Yeah,
So the liver, from what I understand, detoxifies the body.
that's all horse shit. Don't believe that.
Because I had this discussion with someone about, you know, suggested she eat raw liver, and she said, no, that's the
That's
organ that
incorrect.
detoxifies the body.
It's a transforming organ that doesn't hold on to the toxins. That's the erroneous assumption, right? Just like seaweed is a bioremediator in the ocean, and the seaweed doesn't hold on to the toxins. It's an alchemical agent to transform the toxins. Just like Paul Stament's work up in the Alameda Naval Yard. He put this funguses and the mushrooms up there, and the toxic naval yard in Alameda with all the chemicals was fixed in a year
Yeah.
by the mushrooms and the mycelium. So, you know,
So
the
the
body
liver
is
has
not an automaton.
So the liver
It's
has
not a
no
filter.
toxicity.
It's not a filter like, you know, like the sieve.
Yeah.
It's not what the liver is.
Okay.
And it's like this pH, people, this pH thing that cancer only thrives in acidic pH. I just want to scream when I hear that. Can we contextualize pH? You never want your stomach being alkaline. So you talk body compartments. The blood can never be acidic by definition. The lowest you can get 7.35. It varies between 7.35 and 7.45, the blood pH. So when is the blood ever acidic? Never. Never. It's just, you're looking at a compartments. And most cancer in my world is overly alkaline tissues, actually. You know, when you get those horrible pains at night, or the restless leg, and the symptoms that are aggravated when you're at rest, or the cough gets worse and you lay down, that's overly alkaline symptom. Whenever something's aggravated when you're at rest, in resting mode, that's overly alkaline tissues. Could be too acid in the gut, but the tissues are too alkaline. So how did our ancestors cure that? Tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in a shot glass before bed. It temporarily acidifies the body enough to get you to sleep. Then you go into tetany later. Hopefully it won't wake you up. But if you do, you have your little shot next time you wake up.
So does that help with restless legs and women?
It can. It's the first thing to try, right? Because a quart of ACV is like $7.
Right,
you know?
right. Because I've heard that magnesium.
Right. So the ACV is a little bit of a potassium source. Royal Leaves talk about that. And then there's this alkaline tissue poison called guanidine, which is not on there. guanidine, 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 and the worst way to get it is overly cooked meat. And so Royal Lee discovered the same thing that a lot of these old doctors discovered. The Vermont folk medicine doctor, DC Jarvis, also discovered this, that green juices and apple cider vinegar deactivate guanidine. So chlorophyll and apple cider vinegar speed up this painful tissue poison. And so standard process makes these chlorophyll pearls. They're fat soluble, and they actually think so much of apple cider vinegar. They have an apple cider vinegar tablet called Cal-Amo, C-A-L-A-M-O. So if you don't want to drink apple cider vinegar, I go, well, you take a couple of these tablets, you know, they got something for everything.
Oh, that's cool.
Because when pH is the first place to start, I got a client, she's doing enemas, ovarian cancer, and she's like, why do I feel so horrible after an enema? And well, it's partially the season, but it's also the first thing to check on is cramps, because the enema is pulling minerals out of the body. So the first thing to check out is easiest, like just add more salt, add more magnesium to your enemas, including the coffee one. That helped me along quite a bit. Although the guys probably don't want to hear too much about that stuff over there.
They
Yeah.
didn't even hear you.
Okay, good.
I heard it.
So you guys know that water,
Oh, those guys.
I'm gonna talk about water for a second, and then
That's safe.
Boy,
water is H2O, right? 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, right?
Yes.
So oxygen is a pretty reactive element. I put it as yang. So you know that word hydrate?
Yeah.
Hydrogen? Oh. I made this connection when I bought that plasma water machine. Like, so it's a hydrogen donor hydrating. So the hydrating part of water isn't oxygen, it's hydrogen. Hydrohydrate. Pretty interesting. So I think that's what that machine is doing. The theory is the hydrogen is actually going through your cells and hydrating these dried up tissues that are painful.
I
Yeah.
just bought the little $60 thing. The water, hydrogen changes into hydrogen. Are you familiar with that? Same company?
Yeah, you had it last. You
Yeah.
had it
Interesting.
somewhere.
John T.
So
yeah,
how
John
many-
got light.
I got one too.
Yeah. how many
60
water-
bucks.
Oh,
60
that's
bucks
a
is
light.
even more. Mine was even more.
I'd be careful. I'd be careful with those.
Why?
Really?
Does George making them? AquaCure?
I thought so. I thought,
George only
Shuts
makes
all of them.
really, I mean, there's a lot of safety in that equipment. Like it shuts itself off for a number of reasons.
yeah, this runs only so long.
Yeah, just be really
Thank you.
careful
It
with
only
those.
does like a small amount.
Okay, good.
How many glasses for a minute? How much water should you be drinking with that?
Oh, I don't know. There's no science to it. I just saw 300 testimonials in the course of a number of months studying this guy's work. So I'm a studier of who's getting results. That's my whole career. So this guy's getting results. I'm still working backwards as to how it works.
Well, I can drink much more of that than just regular water. I
It's
mean, I
way
can-
more hydrating.
I just guzzle it, no problem.
So I've been doing the adrenal cocktail drink. That's part of the root cause protocol to cure this iron oxygen problem. Is you have 2 adrenal cocktails a day. So it's vitamin C in the form of lemon juice or orange juice if you want a little more sugar, salt, magnesium, and potassium. So you're getting all your, and calcium if it's really ideal, because you have 4 major alkaline minerals. I just mentioned them. What are they? They're always in your blood work. Calcium, potassium, magnesium.
Phosphorus.
That's acidic.
Oh,
Good try though.
Right?
Sodium.
Sodium, oh yeah.
Carbon, everything that life is made of, that one teacher calls it the chosen ones, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, and nitrogen, is the building blocks of life, but none of those elements are alkaline. Hydrogen gets made into hydrochloric acid. Oxygen is very reactive. Nitrogen can be acidic. Sulfur is definitely acidic, and carbon becomes carbonic acid. So in a sense, then, that's why refined fat and refined sugar are so dangerous to the body, because they're hydrocarbons. They're just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and very, very reactive. That's why all fats and all unrefined carbohydrates have trace minerals to buffer the pH part. So natives over there, how are we doing? Okay, getting close to. I think that may have a couple of questions here, but the main thing is that the to-dos here is getting this metabolism cleaned up because in lab work, they're not showing us still the ways to check this. It costs over $200 to get the right lab work to check your iron levels properly. And anybody wants to do it, we can do it. I'm still fudging myself, but my cholesterol is elevated, and I know why now, because my iron is dysregulated. My serum iron is above acceptable levels. And so the cholesterol is a sink for that toxicity. Cholesterol will rise as a backup antioxidant. It's in one of those iron posts that Morley did put together. Cholesterol is an antioxidant because it has 12 spaces for oxygen in the cholesterol molecule. So it's an oxygen sink, and it stabilizes the cell membranes. They're too leaky also. There's a huge cholesterol conspiracy.
That's why we want to eat cholesterol out of our diet.
It's the #1 selling drug in the world still, statins. And they're worthless.
They're dangerous.
Well, I don't see any efficacy. They make claims, but there's now blood pressure medications can save lives, but the cholesterol meds, one of a office manager in this office I was working in started taking because her doctor suggested she did. And she said she had such bad muscle pain the next day, she went off it that day.
Wow, that was that quick.
Kind of
that
lucky to
quick.
get that quick feedback to make the connection.
She wasn't that sensitive either. Like, she was a drinker and the office manager, but yeah, I was impressed that she's like, Craig, this is like the worst thing I've ever taken. And I told her, I told you not to take it, and so now you got a day of pain, not listening,
Well, luckily, the doctor that I had after the stroke, the neurologist recommended statins as a guarantee, but the doctor said no, because it wasn't that caused the stroke. Keep going. The blood pressure.
Right. And so I have blood pressure is so important to me. I even wrote an essay about it 20 years ago, because all you have to do is go to gardening. If you got too much pressure in the hose is going to burst.
Right.
And that's pretty important, because this is one of our, we blow a gasket here, we blow a gasket here, we blow a gasket in the kidneys, we blow a gasket in these peripheral areas. And I see people that elevated blood pressure too long, I can't even touch their feet. Their toes are so sensitive
Wow.
because it's the end of the balloon, right?
Right. Interesting.
It's all bloated from the pressure.
Oh,
So one of the few drugs I've actually recommended to a client, and a couple of times in my career, this one client, I said, you've got to get on some blood pressure meds, at least to get it down, because it was 210/140.
right.
And that's just too high.
Right.
But she wouldn't drop the wheat.
Oh,
I told her, if you drop the wheat, your blood pressure will go way down. And it took her 6 months she spent $500 on hawthorns and all the blood pressure herbs, and kept coming to me, and because she didn't want to stop the wheat.
right.
So what's that? A broken chooser, right?
Right.
It's foundation 1, broken chooser, like trying to square a peg in a round hole. Like, God, the blood pressure won't go down, Craig. And I ain't gonna stop eating that wheat. Okay, I'm gonna end on this note, because these guys probably need to hear this. So I'm in nutrition school, you guys, and this diabetic comes in. I'm in Cal Poly, about 25, 26, and this lady is gonna have the ends of her fingers and toes cut off. And I'm mortified. And she said, I'm so addicted to sugar that I'm not going to stop, and I'm going to let this happen.
Oh my God.
I was so mortified. I went up to her after class and was like, I had to look her in the eye and have her say it to my eyes. I said, you're telling me you're so addicted to sugar, you're willing to lose a digit of your fingers and toes? And she said, yes.
Wow.
Broken chooser.
Can't help her.
That's addiction, right?
That's an addict.
That's an addict. That is,
Yeah.
That's the
it's
critters
ruining
in
her life.
gut.
huh?
That's the critters in her gut.
I've seen end stage candida and black mold clients, and all I want to do is weep. You don't want to be one of those end stage mold people. They get eaten alive. They literally get eaten alive.
One of the things you had said last time, I think, that really stuck with me is after eating dinner and wanting something sweet was the little critters.
Yeah.
The yeasty beasties, as Elsa
Yeah, I
Echeverry put
just
it to
love
me.
I mean, I haven't completely healed from all that, but it certainly got me on the right track.
Well, that came from, it all started when I was 20 in college, and I had horrible suicidal depression. And this teacher at Cabrillo College, my English instructor, gave me this book called Sugar Blues by William Dufty.
Sugar blues, yeah.
That book changed my life.
Wow.
Yeah. Written by a Chicago reporter. he had met some famous actress in a bar, and she walked right up to him and said, "You must have the sugar blues." And it changed his life. She spotted him across the bar.
Wow.
Right. Because there's a certain look to the eyes when the sugar is just a
When-
real
That
problem.
was like in the, what, wasn't that written in like the 30s or 40s?
I don't remember, but it's a long time ago.
It was, yeah.
Long time ago.
I read a
Impressive.
paper back like,
It's like Greta Garbo kind of stuff, was the actress. It's like some 30s, 40s, 50s, what? So the sugar is back. That's why the first foundation is sugar regulation. Because if you can't keep your sugar regulated well, you're never going to be healthy and make clear decisions.
You
Yeah.
can't even start, it just starts, just one little piece for me.
Well, back in the day when I was getting off, we used to say, eat carbs, crave carbs.
Oh, okay.
So you just can't. It's like the people that are truly alcoholics, they know they can't have a drink because they can't stop.
Right.
I have a few friends like that. It's like, no, keep it away.
Yeah.
Because if I go 1, I go 300,
The story of Jack LaLanne's a good example of the sugar issue.
What was that about him again? Was he a sugar addict?
Yeah, he was
Oh,
so addicted to sugar that he attacked his brother with an axe one day. His mother,
And the sugar made him do it?
his mother took him, it was actually affecting his mental process. And his mother took him to a lecture
It's
by
Winky defense.
Paul Bragg back in the 30s. And I think he was a teenager at the time. And so after the lecture, he had the presence of mind to decide to give up sugar because Paul Bragg told him about all the evils and stuff. And he realized he was talking about him. And so he gave up sugar, and then he became, he started getting into weightlifting and exercising and stuff. He was really emaciated, skinny, anemic looking kid. And he had like bottle glasses. He couldn't see very well. And after he gave up sugar and he started working out and stuff, he became, Jack LaLanne, the muscle guy. And he started opening a gym in Oakland, and he became famous on television.
How old was he when he died?
I think on his 80th birthday, he swam from Alcatraz to San Francisco, handcuffed, towing one person for every year of his life in boats.
How do you swim in the water?
Handcuffed,
Yeah.
holy mackerel.
Really?
How do you swim with handcuffs?
My grandfather watched him every
That
morning
was
at
Jack
7 a.m.
LaLanne.
Yeah, my grandfather did a Jack LaLanne workout every morning at 7
Oh,
a.m.
really? Wow.
My first memory of like age 3 or 4 was like Gramps out there
He
doing
was
this.
probably a really healthy guy.
My Gramps was a Jack LaLanne looking kind of guy. Yeah.
Cool.
Wow.
He killed chickens. I have memories of chickens running around with their heads cut off in the backyard, and he had a garden, huge garden in the backyard. And
Cool.
in a lot of ways, he was the first Lee of my life. The Lee Osbaldiston that I did the dinner prayer tonight. But yeah, my grandfather was like, he was a hunter,
You're a
fisherman.
lucky grandkid,
Telling me, man.
and a guy like that around.
Yeah, playing in the garden, like I had a good childhood. Yeah. Also, normal American dysfunction.
Yeah, come on, you gotta be American.
So.
American.
So if you hadn't heard of Jack LaLanne, you can go to YouTube, and he has little 5-minute blurbs, and he's really fun to watch if you can get past his accent a little bit. And he's on a lot. And there's a juicer. There's still the Jack LaLanne juicer out there.
What accent does he?
It's kind of like a mafioso is what I remember, like Chicago mafioso.
Like Italian?
Yeah, Italian. Yeah, Jack LaLanne. I think Bernie could relate to it. Something out of Chicago, but you can go listen to it yourself. I don't remember that well. So I wanted to finish on that with the note of how important that we manage our sugar, because when I broke my neck, these young guys did. That's when I saw, like, I'm not going to heal a broken neck with Cheetos and Jolly Ranchers and sugar. That's for sure. God darn it. So it's just fair warning, you guys, that it's really important to monitor that and enjoy while you're young, because you don't get away with it when you're older. I end on that note.